Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this episode and all the other episodes can be found on the blog, which is stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com. Today I will be talking a little bit about this week in Stockholm, some works in progress, and 2 finished objects. And I'll finish this week with a technique tip. So, starting out, this week in Stockholm, it was my birthday on Friday, and I wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you who sent me messages on Instagram and Ravelry, and those of you who sent me some patterns. It was such a lovely day and so nice to hear from you guys and to know that some other people were wishing me happy birthday. So, thank you. And that was also the finish of our knit-along that's been running for about the past 5 weeks. And that's the Spring Lattice KAL. You can head over to the Ravelry group and check out the finished objects thread. It's locked now, but you can still see everyone's pictures in there. And I believe we had 42 or 43 finished shawls. So that was exciting to see all of those, and a couple people sneaking them in at the end, which was perfect. I didn't close the thread until I think June 6th in the morning, because I figured that was about midnight on the West Coast in the US. So I hoped that would let a few more of you maybe get in the last couple minutes there. So, I will go ahead and announce the winners of the knit-along now. The first prize is this lovely project bag that was donated by a viewer and friend of the podcast. And this prize is going, it's a project bag, and the yarn is just to show you kind of scale. It's not part of the prize. But this project bag is going to Knit24, who is Sue, and that was post number 25. She knit a lattice shawl, and she knit it in similar colors to the original, which was kind of a pinkish main body and then a cream border. And she said this was her first ever knit-along, so congratulations, Sue, on being a lucky winner for your first knit-along. The next prize is going to be the yarn prize I talked about last week, which will be the winner's choice of 2 balls of Yaku fingering or 2 balls of Rauma Fin Ullgarn, which are both, I think one of them's Danish and one of them's Norwegian. And that will be going to post number 18, who is Dinky Debbie, and she knit Swedish Spring in a really nice red color. So congratulations, and then finally, post number 38, who is Firefly12, Carrie. She will be winning she has won, the project bag from Lee, from Shop Luli, which is the heart project bag that I showed you last week. So, congratulations. And Carrie said this was her first ever knitting, her first ever lace project. And so she, in the beginning she was struggling a little bit with the charts, and also the fact that she is a left-handed knitter was a little bit difficult, but I think she got some help on the board, and although her shawl didn't turn out exactly the same as the original pattern, it did come out to a cool kind of eyelet pattern. I think now she said she understands the charts a little more, so she may knit another one and see if she can get it to be the original. So congratulations to all of you winners, and if you can just get in contact with me, or I'll contact you with something, and we'll get those prizes out to you. Also, thank you to those of you who donated prizes to the knit-along. It's really nice to have your support. So, knit-along is over. There's lots of other knit-alongs going on right now. I'm sure that you're hearing all about them on other podcasts. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to be participating in some, but I imagine that I will be. So, speaking of chart knitting though, I just wanted to make a little announcement, which is now the shawl patterns, my shawl patterns for spring, Swedish spring, and the lattice shawl are available in both charted and written form. Originally I published the patterns only with charts because I really like knitting from charts, and I think that it's a really great way to knit lace because it helps you learn to read your knitting and see where it's easier to see where you've made a mistake or how the pattern should be coming out. But some people don't knit from charts. And so I decided to go ahead and translate those charts into written instructions too. So if you have purchased the pattern already, you'll find that if you do the update pattern in your Ravelry library, you will have access now to an additional, like a supplementary paper which has the written instructions, but you'll still need the original pattern because that has all the other information about how to knit the shawls. So, yes, and just another little news bit, I guess. Ravelry has made some changes that went into place on June 1st, and that affects people who are purchasing patterns from within the EU. At the beginning of the year, there was the changes with VAT taxes and all of that mess, which was a headache for independent designers and people who were selling downloadable goods within the EU, or people who wanted to purchase them in the EU. So Ravelry made a temporary solution, which was to have everything directed through loveknitting.com. So my patterns have all been available on Love Knitting from the beginning. But starting June 1st, all sales are going through Ravelry once again. So I still have my patterns available on Love Knitting, but if you would rather not set up an account there, now all the patterns are available on Ravelry. So if you live in the EU, you can purchase them. And of course if you live in the United States, but it affects mostly people who live in the EU and have to pay additional taxes on the pattern price. So just a little interesting change that happened there that I thought I'd let you guys know. This is really nice for people who are living in the EU, because some patterns that were originally not available to those in the EU once the selling of patterns changed in the beginning of the year, such as the Fish Lips Kiss Heel pattern. That pattern and all other patterns are now available because everything is going through Ravelry once again. So, that's it. Alright, so this week in Stockholm, like I said, it was my birthday. Thomas had a test in the morning, and then I met him in the city for some lunch, and it was actually the nicest, sunniest, warmest day that we've had so far this year in Stockholm. And so it was really nice to be out. I was definitely a bit overdressed for the weather, but we just sat outside for a bit and had some ice cream, and then we headed up to his parents' house for a lovely salmon dinner on the balcony outside, and finished it off with a raspberry cake, which is kind of, I guess it would be like a traditional Swedish cake. I guess more traditional would usually be with strawberries. But what it is basically like a couple layers, 2 or 3, I think, layers of just vanilla cake. And I think we had banana in between the layers. And then there is whipped cream, like fresh whipped cream on the cake. And sometimes there's a layer of jam or something also, but we had bananas. And then on the top are berries, and we had raspberries, but the strawberries in Sweden in June, especially towards the end of June and July, are just amazing. And so a lot of times that cake has strawberries on it. We were celebrating both my birthday and Thomas's birthday, sort of, because his birthday is at the end of May, and his parents were out of town, so, yeah. We were celebrating, both of us, on Friday. So it was a really nice birthday, and it was the first time that we had been able to sit outside to have dinner, which was really just perfect. So, yes, I also this week received a couple of packages from my family and friends, and I wanted to go ahead and share some of those with you. I'll just share a couple of things from the packages. But one that came from my mom had some things I won't show you, but it also had something really sweet from some of my knitting friends in Boulder, where I'm from. So I used to go to a knit group in Boulder, and they know, I guess some of them watch the podcast, maybe not regularly, but some of them do, and they know that I've been working on the hexagon blanket, and so they all sent me some little scraps for my blanket, and then a little note some of them have as well, so who they're from, and then the little note. These ones are from my mom, and these ones are from someone else in my knitting group, and she sent a really funny card which says, "May you knit 11 million more happy stitches," and then she wrote in, "or more in your case," which is just funny. And it has this old lady knitting a long blanket or something that's halfway in her tote bag. So, hilarious. But that was just a really, really thoughtful gift, and I'm looking forward to knitting those into, well, crocheting them into my blanket, actually. Another package I received was from my really good friend we've been friends since we were born. We lived right down the street from each other up until when we went to college, moved away. But then we went to college only 3 or 4 hours away from each other too, so not that far. And she has been in South America for the past, I think it was like 1.5 years or maybe 2 years. Now she's back in Colorado, but she's moved back very recently. So she sent me, I'll just show you this, a massive bag of wool. And she is not a knitter or a spinner, but she didn't know how much I would need for a specific project or something, so she just wanted to make sure that she got me enough. She's like, "Hopefully it will be enough for you to make a hat or something." I'm like, "Yeah, I think this will be enough." So that was really funny and so nice to receive. But this wool is, I've been trying to figure out what kind of wool it might be by looking in my Fleece and Fiber source book and looking at breeds that are native to Chile, or that could be from that area. That's where she was for part of where this wool came from. And the only thing I could find was that it possibly could be a Corriedale sheep, which is in that region called Punta sheep. So I'm not sure. I've only spun Corriedale once, and I know that it's a pretty crimpy fiber, which this definitely is. And when I kind of, just give it a little twist with my fingers, it's quite bouncy and springy and feels like it might be Corriedale or something like that. But I'm not sure. So I've just pulled out little bits of this. It's quite woolly, and it still smells very sheepy, so it will definitely need some washing. So I don't want to pull it out too much now, but that will be a lot of fun to spin. And I think, and what she said was that it's local to the area, and it's all women who are doing this fiber production and dyeing, and that they also spin the yarn, and they tend to make it into, I think she said, like leg warmers and more kind of chunky yarn, and I sort of got the feeling of like art yarn and things. So I might try to do a little bit different spinning techniques on that, because I don't think it will be able to be spun really fine, which is how I tend to spin usually, but I think it will be fun to give it a try for some other types of spinning. So really looking forward to trying that out, and yeah, it's a lot. And she has it in one of these, like, you know, Ziploc vacuum packs, which isn't vacuumed, but good place to store it. And her mom also sent a lovely little gift along as well, and that is I think it could be a bracelet, or it could be a mug cozy, and this is out of Paco Vicuña fiber, and she got this at the Loveland Yarn Fest, and it's from what I can tell, it might be from Jefferson Farms Natural Fibers. There's the little package it came in. And she also sent me this tiny little fluff of fiber, which is seriously the softest fiber that I've ever felt in my life. Like, it's crazy. So I will probably spin that on a spindle, because it's really just a little amount for something. Probably will just stay as a skein, just to look at, and it's so pretty. And then this lovely little cuff, which is also really, the sun just came out, so now everything's okay. Which is just a sweet little cable design, and it is really soft and lovely. So thank you. And I thought you guys might enjoy this postcard, which is from Fancy Tiger Crafts, which is my favorite yarn store in Denver. And it says, "We'll be there for you." Which, okay, cute. So those were some packages that I got this week. I also got a nice package from my sister, and I've been enjoying my favorite snack from the US, which she sent me. I love goldfish. They don't have them here, so, but she sent me a lot of other little things to remind me of home, which was really sweet. The last things that I got this week in connection to my birthday were, I picked out these postcards, and Thomas got them for me in this nice little tin, and there's 4 different designs, and these are postcards that are made in Sweden. And I bought them in a new little shop that's in Old Town, and I just thought they were really pretty, so I really like those. And in the morning, on my way into town my way into the city to meet Thomas for lunch, while he was still taking his test, I stopped into the Makery 14, which is a yarn shop there in Old Town, to pick up one more ball of the Holst Garn Super Soft 100% wool. And I already had one ball of this from a while ago. I can't remember when. I already had one, and I needed another one for a design that I'm planning. So I stopped in there and picked this up, and it comes in 50-gram put-ups of a 2-ply. It's closer to a lace or light fingering because it's around 575 meters per 100 grams. So I have about 575 meters here. It's a very woolly yarn. Not that it's itchy, it is definitely soft. but it has a rustic feel to it, so it's not super shiny or slippery. It's very matte, actually. And it actually comes in the, like, caked up in, oh, I have fiber everywhere. It comes in the little cake form, like a cake like this. And because this yarn has a lot of spinning oil and lanolin still in it when it's sold in the cake form, I wound it off on my Nitty Naughty, which I showed you last week how to use, and I wash it and let it dry, and then I just reskeined it up and I just wrapped the tag around both of them. So it doesn't actually come looking like this, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to prefer to work with it pre-washed, because before when I knit it, I hadn't washed it, and it just felt like kind of sticky, and I wasn't enjoying it as much as I think I could have been. So I think now the yarn feels a lot different. It feels a lot more squishy and soft, and it definitely lost a lot of grease and dirt and lanolin. My white sink was a very nasty color when I was done with it, so that kind of just reinforced for me why I like to wash my yarn sometimes before I knit with it. So I purchased one of these on my birthday, and that was it for yarn. Okay, so I have been working on a couple of things this week. I cast on one new project last night, which is going to be kind of a take-along project for while I'm babysitting, especially when it's nicer outside. With some of the families who I babysit for, we spend a lot of time at the park, and like hours. And the park's very, the kids are really close by and stuff, and there's some benches for parents and babysitters, I guess, to sit on, and I can sit there and knit on something really simple that I can do without looking, so that I can keep an eye on the kids. And then that means that I'm willing to stay there longer, so they get to stay there longer, and they're happier at the end of the day. And so I needed to just start something that I could use in that time. So I picked up, I've been wanting to knit this pattern for a while, which is the Blueberry Waffle Socks. This is a pattern by Sandra Turner, and that is what I have so far. You can see that I just did about 11, I think I did 11 rows for the cuff, and then I've just started the pattern, which is super simple. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. And I'm just knitting along. I wanted to get them started so that I could have them ready for example, today when I go and babysit in the afternoon, that I'll be able to work on those, as long as it's not raining, which it might be. I am knitting this in this yarn is a very deep navy blue with hints of green and little tiny flashes of maroon, kind of, I would say not even maroon, I would say like eggplant purple. So some variations of blue and then an eggplant. It's a very difficult color to show, just because it is so dark. But I like how it's knitting up so far. And I think that the Blueberry Waffle Socks, because it changes, well, because it varies between, like the gauge sort of shifts, that I think there won't be any pooling, really, which is something that I don't particularly like, so I'm happy that there won't be pooling. This yarn, maybe you want to know, is the Mountain Colors Beautiful Hand-Painted Yarns. This is from Corvallis, Montana, and it is in this is the Crazy Foot base, which is a 90% superwash merino wool and 10% nylon. There's 425 yards per skein, and each skein is approximately 100 grams. This is the Swift Current colorway. I'm really enjoying working with this yarn so far. I don't think I've ever knit with a 90-10 blend of merino and nylon, and it's very nice and springy, and it feels like it's going to be a really good wearing sock. It's quite soft and everything, but it's a very high twist yarn, and so it has great stitch definition, and the what's it called? The waffle ribbing there is really popping, I think. So I got this yarn from for Christmas from one of my real life knitting friends, Kira, who lives in Eugene, Oregon. So thank you, Kira. I cast on 64 stitches for those socks, even though the pattern I think is like for a DK weight sock or something, but I'm just, you know, transposing the whatever, I'm just putting the stitch pattern onto my size of socks. Actually, it's not my size, it's someone else's size, but I'm not going to say who, because these are going to be a gift. I'm knitting these socks on my new needles, which are the Knit Pro Carbons, and it's the 80 centimeter cable length, which is 32 inches about, and it's 2.25 millimeter, which is a US size 1. And I'm really enjoying them so far. I was hoping to find a needle that was similar to a metal needle that I would get a little bit of a tighter gauge, because I have had to go down to zeros for knitting socks on metal needles, and I don't enjoy it as much. So I think these will work. And I wanted to test them out on this pattern, or with this, who I'm knitting these for, because they are a little bit bigger anyway, so if they come out too big, then it's okay if they're bigger than my normal sock size. So that is what I've been working on. And I have 2 finished projects this week. I have the first one that I finished on June 4th, just in time for the knit-along, is my Swedish Spring Shawl, and this is the 3rd one that I've knit. And I knit this in the Yaku 416 Superwash merino wool, and it is in colorway 1279, which is Bordeaux. And I knit this for Annalena, and she requested it, so here it is. It reaches my full wingspan, which is, well, my height is 167 centimeters, and that's 5 foot 6 inches, and it's my whole wingspan. So I've never measured my wingspan to see if it's exactly the same as my height, but it should be similar, right? I modified this one slightly from the original pattern, and the way that I did it was that because I wanted to use as much yarn as possible, and also to make this shawl sort of bigger than the sample one that I had knit for the pattern, because the recipient is quite tall, and I thought that a bigger shawl could suit her well. So I modified it. The original pattern has these 2 lace sections, and then I added an additional one down here, but I only did 2 eyelet rows instead of 3, as in the other. The first 2 have 3 sections of eyelets, and the last one only has 2, before I did the edging. And it's a good thing that I did that, because this is how much yarn I had left, and that was from using 2 balls, which are 200 meters each. This is what was left. In the pattern, I said that the original shawl took 400 meters. It took a little bit less than that, but I just added a buffer for the pattern's sake, I guess. And so, but you can always, and that's true for all my patterns, but you can always see how much yarn I actually used, like my real yardage, I guess, on my pattern page for on my project page for the pattern. So I say like how much I really used if you're going to be really close for yardage and you want to maybe play a little bit of yarn chicken. So here it is, and I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. It's obviously a nice size to wear for the front, and then it's also quite big enough so that it could be worn over the shoulders as well. So, yay, I hope she likes it. I'll probably give that to her this upcoming weekend. So, the last project that I worked on and finished this week is the Sparrow Tunic. And this is a project that I've been working on for the past couple weeks, and it's a tunic for my mom. I sort of, I didn't design this pattern. It's a tunic that is based on a picture from an anthropology magazine, catalog, whatever. So I improvised the design from that picture. Here it is. This is the Sparrow Tunic, and it's in my mom's size, hopefully. Custom size. That's the back. It has some 4x1 ribbing there. And the back on the bottom has a little bit of a shirt tail curve there, so you can see that it's curves down lower than the front. On the side there's some little slits there, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. When you're knitting a project that's not, you're not knitting it from a pattern. I mean, especially when you're not knitting it from a pattern. I guess it could always be the case that you're a little bit uncertain of how something's going to come out, but especially when you're not knitting it from an established pattern, it's not until the very end when everything comes together and it's like, oh yeah, okay, it did work, or oh, it didn't work. But in this case, everything pretty much worked out, and I'm really pleased with it. She is coming to visit quite soon, and I will be giving it to her then. And so hopefully I will get some pictures with her in it, or maybe we'll have a guest appearance. I don't know about that yet. We'll see. So really happy to have this done, and Swedish Spring. So these are two projects off the needles, which are ready to go to their recipients. So, finally this week I wanted to talk to you about a technique tip, which can be very intimidating for some people, and I can understand why it's intimidating, because it's kind of like, well, it's short rows. Just say that. So a lot of times people don't know what short rows are, they don't really have a conceptual idea of how they work, and then I think it can be intimidating to know what to do when a pattern says, this pattern uses short row shaping to blah 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 blah, whatever. So I'm hoping that my diagrams that I've drawn up here could hopefully help you to get a better understanding of when you might need to use short rows and how you can use them. You can use short rows to... Okay, so basically what is a short row? A short row is a row that you don't knit to the end of your needle. Instead, you just work part way across the work, and then you turn by doing either a wrap-in turn, or a shadow wrap, or German short row, or twin stitch. Lots of different ways, which, okay, just forget about all those for a minute. Basically, all you need to know is that you just work part way across your knitting, do a stitch that enables you to turn back around and work the other direction again. So you leave a section on your needle unworked. What does this do? Well, it adds extra rows on only part of your knitting, extra vertical rows on part of your knitting, compared to the other part. So this can be useful when you need some extra fabric in certain areas. One place in particular that you may need extra fabric is on the back of your neck. So I'm wearing a scoop neck shirt right now, so obviously the front is lower than the back. But even if I was wearing a crew neck shirt that was like closer to like where my necklace is, the front of the shirt or the sweater, in the case of knitting, the front of the sweater needs to be lower than the back. Otherwise, if you knit them the same height, you'll get one of these, like, the front of the sweater is just like up touching your neck in a really annoying way. So I'm just going to do kind of like a little side view here, hopefully, kind of. You can see like the top of the sweater or shirt, the top here, it's hard to show, is higher than this point, right? So I kind of, that wasn't a good explanation, but here I drew a little picture. So if you think of this as like the side view, right? This is the neck, if you want to do a crew neck. Even if you don't want to do a crew neck, it's nice to raise up the back of a sweater a little bit, just so it's more comfortable. You need more fabric, there's more distance on your back than there is on the front. So if you want the front of the collar to end here, the back needs to be a little higher. So you need this like extra wedge of fabric in here to bring that collar edge upward. And you can achieve that by doing short rows. So here's some other little diagrams that I drew. There's a couple different ways that you can do short rows. The blue here is just normal knitting. So that's like you're knitting all the way across your needles, all the stitches on the needles. Then when it switches into pink, you knit partway across, do the turn, knit partway across, do a turn, partway across, do a turn, partway across, do a turn, and then you knit all the way across and you're working these stitches as you go, and you knit all the way back across and you're working these stitches as you go, and work all the way across and back and forth. And this results in the fabric towards the middle going up. So this would be an example of how you could get your neck, the back neck of your fabric, to be up a little bit higher compared to the body of your fabric. If you work a short row toe or foot of a heel of a sock, you might want a fabric that sticks out in a little cup, and you can do that by working short rows on either side. You can also use short rows to make a wedge. And so you would do normal knitting, and then you would knit all the way to the edge on one side, but not on the other side. So you would turn all the way to the side, turn, all the way to the side, turn, and you would get this wedge here. In this case, you're not working to the very edge when you're doing the short rows on any of these rows. It's a little bit hard to explain on a piece of paper because the thing with short rows is that they're creating a fabric that isn't flat. And that could be really beneficial for you if you want to add bust shaping, for example, if you want to pull up the back of your sweater and the fabric's going to be curved a little bit, which is how your back goes. But it makes it hard to explain how they work in actual knitting. Sometimes you just have to do them and test it out. Like, make a swatch, do some short rows on it. Some places where you could do short rows on the back of a sweater. If you want to have this curved bottom of the sweater like I have on the tunic, you could do short rows in a couple of different places down here and you'll get a curve. I'll show you this tunic in a minute. Again, we'll look at that closer. If you just want to raise the back of your sweater, a good place to do some short rows is do maybe 2 sets of short rows. So you'll have 2 points on each side where you've turned the work. So you're going to get extra rows in here. And I would do a couple of them right before at the beginning of the yoke if you're doing from the bottom up, and then also maybe like 1 or 2 right before the neckline. And that will help just shift the whole back up a little bit compared to the front, but also keep a length of the back that's longer, because you still need the back to go. You can't just have it move up, because then like the back would also, you don't want just the back to move up, you also need it to maintain the same length so that you get a flat bottom, which is why you need to add extra rows in here so that there's more rows on this back than on the front. Does that make sense? Maybe not. Here's maybe an easier view for the back. This is normal knitting all the way across, and then the short rows in here, and then go back to normal knitting, and that will push the fabric up. On the sparrow tunic, I did short rows in a couple of places. The first place I did them was on the back, on the bottom, to get the shirt tail curve. And you can see a little bit here, 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 and here, places where I turned the work. You can see them a little bit on that side too. So basically I did this. The other thing that's tricky about this is that I did it in 2 pieces for the back. But I basically knit, 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 turned, knit, knit, turned, knit, knit, turn, knit, knit, turn, knit, and then I knit all the way to the edge. And that pushes the fabric down, because you're getting extra rows here that aren't over here. It's not the easiest thing to explain. If you are interested in there's not very many good explanations of short rows that I was able to find. It's really difficult to find tutorials on them and things like that. I have found that in Jared Flood's patterns, specifically I knit the cobblestone pullover for my dad. That is a yoked sweater that's worked from the bottom up, and it has short rows, and it shows you exactly where to put them. In general, you're going to want to put them, like on the back, you put them pretty close to the armpits, so that you're working like the whole section is going to move up a little bit. Instead of like, if you just did like really short rows, you would get like a weird bloop section. You wouldn't want to do that. That's what you do if you need a toe, for example, or heel of a sock. The actual method of turning the work a lot of times is called a wrap and turn, or it might be referred to as a wrap and turn in a pattern, where it says, okay, now you're going to work short rows. Work across 20 stitches, then wrap and turn, and purl back across the other direction. I don't like doing wrap and turns because I never know which direction to pick up the wrap, when to pick it up, like how to do it. So I use something called a twin stitch. This is the method of short rows that's used in the Fish Lips Kiss heel. So if you are interested in using short rows for sweaters or whatever, something other than heels, I would still recommend purchasing that pattern. It's a $1 sock pattern for the heel of this. It's basically a heel pattern, but it gives a very detailed explanation of how to do the twin stitch, which is a really great way to do short rows because they're close to invisible. How to do the wrap and turns. You can of course see a little blip blip, but it's really minor. And these actually, I think if I had like been a little bit more aware of them when I was blocking, I would have been able to make them more straight and unnoticeable. So I would recommend the Fish Lips Kiss heel pattern just for the demonstration and illustrations of the twin stitch short row technique. There are other short row techniques as well, German short rows, Japanese short rows, like wrap and turns, but I think the twin stitch one is really the easiest and for me works the best. The other place on this sweater tunic that I did short rows is for the armholes. So you may notice that the ribbing on the top of the armhole is about 1 inch long, but at the bottom of the armhole is only like a couple of rows. So it's kind of like a cap sleeve rib. Does that make sense? Like the ribbing at the top is wider than the ribbing at the bottom. And I did that by doing short rows. So I knit, 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 and then at the end I knit all the way around, twice or something. So that I wasn't ever working all the way back to this underarm point until the very end. Which means that more rows were worked on the top than were worked on the very bottom. So, I know that's not a very detailed explanation of short rows. I may try to pull together an extra episode at some point that goes into depth on short rows, but I think that will require a lot of time with swatching and doing some knitted examples so that you could actually see how it looks in knitted fabric rather than just paper, because it's hard to show on paper. But I hope that these diagrams were a little bit helpful, and that maybe you could understand how it just adds extra fabric in, and you can use that to your advantage if you need extra fabric somewhere. So that is it for the technique tip this week. And I think that gets us about to the end of this episode. I just wanted to say quickly that this may be the last episode in June. I might record one next week, but I will be going out of town shortly, and I will be with my parents for a couple of weeks, and unless I decide to record an episode with some guests on the show, then I likely won't be recording an episode until July. So there probably will be an episode next week, but it just depends on how stressed I am about packing. So we will see. It's kind of good because also this week, I think it's kind of good to take a little break from the podcast, because this week I have also been working on design knitting, and like I said, I don't really want to talk about that a whole lot because it's just like frustrating. I think it's frustrating if I'm talking about it all the time and you can't see it. So if I take a couple of week break from the podcast, then maybe I can get some of that knit up and closer to the point when I want to show you. So that's it, and I hope you have a great week, or a great couple of weeks, depending on how things go. And, oh yeah, this is just a fun little fact at the end here. I wanted to say, well, we're getting really close to the longest day of the year, June 20th, 21st or so. And when I lived in the US, I knew that sunset and sunrise were, well, like the summers in the north were a lot, the days were a lot longer than at 40 degrees latitude where I lived in Colorado. But I didn't really quite realize how much different it was, so I thought it would just be fun to share with you. Right now, in Stockholm, today, the sun rose at 3:34 a.m., and the sun won't set until tonight at 10 p.m. So just a little fun fact for you this week, and that will maybe give you a feeling of how incredibly long the sunlight is during the summer months. And you can imagine that also means that the days are very short in the winter. So that's it for this week, and I will talk to you soon. Happy knitting! Bye!